Hi, this is Miss Camp, and today we are going to do more about prepositions and prepositional phrases. Prepositions answer important questions in a sentence. If they are in the predicate of the sentence, which has the verb in it, they may answer the questions where or when something is happening. If they are answering the question where, it will tell us about a place or a location. Place and location mean the same thing. It tells us where something is happening. If it answers the question when, it will tell us a time that something is happening. If the prepositional phrase is in the subject of the sentence, which is the red part at the beginning, that has a noun in it, it might tell us which noun are we talking about. It might give us some important information about this noun. For example, there is a difference between the boys play soccer and the boys in my class play soccer. In my class tells me which boys are playing soccer. A noun, remember, can be a subject or an object. So if the object is over in the predicate of the sentence, that can also have a prepositional phrase that's answering the question, which one? So if the prepositional phrase is next to a noun, it will answer the question, which one? If the prepositional phrase is after the verb, it will answer the question, where is this happening or when is this happening? So let's look at a couple examples. I'm going to get rid of some of these words, okay? Okay, so let's look first at this one right here. The boys in my class play basketball. Well, every sentence needs to have two parts. It needs to have a subject and it needs to have a predicate. So in this sentence, the subject is the boys in my class and the predicate is play basketball. Inside this subject has a lot of words. The boys in my class. There are actually two nouns in that word, and we talked about this yesterday. I'm going to zoom in here on this. We have to find the verb, and we have to decide, should the verb be play or should it be play with an S on the end? Well, it's going to have an S on the end if the subject is just one. And we can see that we have this noun class and we have the noun boys. Boys has an S and class is just one. Boys is more than one, class is just one. So how do we know which one to use? Well, it has to do with the fact that this is a preposition, and so this whole thing right here is a prepositional phrase. So class is inside that prepositional phrase. That makes class the object of the preposition, and that is never used as the subject. So we can just cover that up for a minute, and then we can see that the boys are the ones playing. The boys play basketball because this is just one. We do not have an S at the end of play, so we do not want to use this right here. So our sentence is, the boys in my class play basketball. In my class is telling us which boys are we talking about. Over here, when we look at where and when, our subject here is they, And the rest of the sentence is going to be the predicate. Play on the playground. So they is the subject, play is the verb. They play where? On the playground. On the playground is answering the question where they play. For when, our sentence still has to have two parts. They is the subject and the other part is the predicate. Play after school. They play. When do they play? They play after school. After school answers the question when. So you can see that our prepositional phrases can answer the questions which one, which boys are playing basketball, where are they playing, and when are they playing. For the rest of our lesson today, we're only going to be talking about three prepositions, in, on, and at. And I'm putting them in this order. In, on, and at can be used to answer the questions where and also when. First, we're going to look at when. So you can see in this picture, we have the preposition in, and then we have the preposition on, that's in the green circle, and then we have the preposition at, that's in the purple circle. The reason this picture is done in circles is because in the middle, in the purple circle, this is the most specific time. So I have that in Chinese for you over here. That's right here. This means we know exactly when something is happening. If we know exactly when something is happening, very specific, that's the word I want you to learn, specific, then we use the preposition at. So we could say, we will have class at 2:30. We will watch a movie at 4 o'clock. When it gets less specific and we don't know exactly when, we know a little bit, but not exactly when, we use on. So we use on for when we know the day or the date, but not the time. So at is if we know the time, on is if we know the day, or the date. When I say date, I'm talking about something like August 10th. A day would be Tuesday or Monday. A specific day would be a holiday, like Christmas Day. So we could say, we will go to school on August 10th. We will visit our family on Christmas Day. We will have a party on my birthday. I will go to my friend's house on Tuesday. So if it's a day, we use on. If it's a time, we use at. Now let's look at the blue circle. The blue circle is not specific. This is going to be a bigger amount of time. It could be an entire month. For example, we have vacation in August. Grandpa was born in 1947. Spring is a season. It is 3 months. So it is a bigger amount of time than one day. We could say the flowers will bloom in spring. We're going to talk about this word in just a minute. That's called century. The past is the whole big amount of time that already happened, right? That's everything that happened before right now. The future is also a big amount of time. That's everything that hasn't happened yet. that will happen after right now. This word is talking about, the 1980s is talking about a decade, and we're going to be talking about that word today also. This would be a specific year, like she was born in 2009. Okay, so we're going to move here to we're going to learn about a couple words. So the first word we're going to learn about is the word century. But in order to learn about the word century, we need to look at this blue line. This blue line right here is called a timeline. It's a line that we use to show how time moves. You can see right here at the end of the timeline, this would be the year 2000. We are probably in, right here, 2021. But we're going to look before that. So right here in the middle, where it says 1 and 1, I'm going to make a line, and this is going to be year 0. Now it used to be that we always used these letters right here, and we would say BC and AD. So find year 0, which is right here, and then any time after that, like right here, that could be year 100 AD. We are in the year 2021 AD. And before that, we have to go backwards. So this here would be like 200 years before year 0 started. So for that one, we would say 200 BC. Well, those names came from, you can see here, the BC came from before Christ. Because when the timeline was created, when someone decided, how do we know what year it is? First, they had to find out what a year was, right? A year is the amount of time it takes the earth to go all the way around the sun one time. Well, a long time ago, people didn't even know that the earth moved around the sun. So after people figured out that the earth is round and that it moves around the sun, then they started to figure out what a year was, right? 365 days or 366 days. And then they said, well, what should be year 1? What should be year 2? Well, they decided that they would make year 0 right here. Year 0 was when Jesus was born, and Jesus is sometimes called Jesus Christ. So Jesus is from the Christian religion, like Miss Camp. So if we are a Christian, we know about Jesus Christ. You can see in the word Christian is at the very beginning the word Christ. So this is when he was born. And so when you look at before Christ, you can see this C right here is this C. And this B is this B. So that was before Christ was born. And then I used to remember this word Anno Domini. That is not English. That is a different language. I think that is Latin. But the way I used to remember it was that Jesus died when he was 33 years old, and I used to remember it as after his death. I know that seems kind of sad, but that's how I remembered AD. But they don't use that. Well, some people still do, but they've also come up with a different way to talk about these because they didn't want it to just be for, how can I erase all of this here? They didn't want this to just, hang on. Okay, there we go. Let me get rid of this. And and this, and this. I don't know if I want that. Okay, let's try that. And so they came up with some new ways to do it, and I'm not as familiar with these, but you might have learned about this in school, the BCE and the CE, but it still comes from this point in time of 0. Next, we're going to look at the meaning of a century. So here we can see it says understanding centuries. A century is 100 years. That is a long period of time. I'm going to zoom in here on this is year 0. Okay, so let's think about this for a minute. I'm zooming in a lot. This would be like year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, all the way up to 100. So from here to here is 100 years. We call this the first century. But in that first century, the years go from 0 up to 99. So in year 25 or in year 73, that is in the first century. It is in the first 100 years. Then, all of a sudden it becomes year 100. Okay, so right here is year 100. And from here to here, the years are going to be 101 and 107 and 125, all the way up till it gets to year 200. This in here is the second century. The numbers of the years begin with 101 and 103 and 142, all the way from 100 up to 199. There's 100 years in there, and that is the second century. So then we just keep on going up until where we are right now. So if we look here in the year 2000, we call this the 21st century. This is the 21st group of 100 years after year 0. So a century is 100 years. The next word we need to understand is the word decade. A decade is a group of 10 years. So in this timeline, this is a timeline that is going this way. It starts with 2010, and then it's 1 year to 2011, another year, and it goes all the way up to 2019. That's 10 years, and 10 years is called a decade. If you were going to talk about, remember the in, at, on. So in is for a big period of time, like a year. So if you wanted to talk about something that happened in the year 2016, here it says that Pokemon Go is released in 2016. So you could say Pokemon Go is released in 2016. You could look at something that happened in, what else do we see here that looks interesting? Well, we'll just stop there. Okay, let's go. So this is 1 decade, 10 years, and we use in. Here's another decade. This decade, so you can see looking in, we've got 2001, 2002, 2003, 2004, So this would be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. This is a decade. This picture is showing different things that have been invented in technology in those 10 years. Here I am creating a timeline to show a century, which is 100 years. So from 1900 to 1910 is 10 years. From 1910 to 1920 is 10 years. 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. So that was 100 years, right? If I went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So each one of these would be 10 years. Each group of 10 years is 1 decade, so 10 decades equals 1 century. This century, from 1900 all the way up to 1999, is called the 20th century. We have to remember that's because year 0 to year 99 equals the 1st century. When we are writing or talking about centuries, it's a very big amount of time, and so we use the word in. We could say in the 20th century, or in the 19th century, or in the 21st century. We can look at a timeline to show us a decade. So here is a decade of 10 years that begins with 1980. And then this is just 1 year, 1 year, 1 year, 1 year, 1 year. 1980, 1981, 1982, 1983, 1984, 1985, 1986, 1987, 1988, 1989, 1990. So that's 10 years from here to here. And sometimes we like to talk about what are important things or interesting things that happened during this group of 10 years. So this one would be called in the 80s. In the 80s, or you could say in the 1980s. You could say in the 80s, or you could say in the 1980s. But it is a big group of time. It is a whole decade or 10 years, so we use the preposition in. Some examples we could use are, let's see, which ones can I do first? Okay, so in the 1980s, big hair was very popular. In America, you would see a lot of girls with hair that looked like this. So you would say, big hair was popular in the 80s. There was a band called the Beatles. They were popular in the 60s. So this was the 60s. Or the 1960s. In the 1970s, I'll change the 6 to a 7. In the 70s, or in the 1970s, the banana seat bicycle was popular. Lots of kids had a bike like this one. Also in the 1970s, in the 1960s and the 1970s, this car, which we called also the Beetle, but not the same as the band, or we called it the Bug, and it could come as a convertible with a top where the top could come down. This was in the 70s or in the 1970s. This was a very popular car. So we are talking about a very specific, I should not say specific, a very general amount of time, not specific, a very big amount of time. So we say in. Another way to look at, instead of using the circle, we can also use this triangle. I want you to look at this triangle is kind of upside down, and at the top it is big, and at the bottom it is small. That's why they're using this upside down triangle. So up here is very big, and down here it is very small. And then they are dividing it into two sides. So this side over here is looking at time that we just talked about. And this side over here is going to look at location, or the place that answers the question where. And we will talk about that next. So looking at time, in, on, and at, we will just take a quick look. We say in for really big amounts of time, like a century, a decade, a year, a month, or even a week. We will say in. Here's the example. Let's meet in April. For on, we would use this for a day, like Monday, Tuesday, or the weekend. We could say, let's meet on Saturday. That's a day of the week. And at is the most specific. Do you remember that word? Specific. The C is kind of cut off here at the end. Specific. This is the smallest amount of time. Let's meet at 12 o'clock. We know exactly when. So this also works when we talk about location. So we're going to move this over here and we're going to look at location. And I have this for you in Chinese also. So general is going to be up here and specific is going to be here. So if we know exactly where we are going to meet, it would be a very specific place. Specific. This would be like, I live at 32 Main Street. I know the name of the street. I also know the number of the street. I know exactly which house on Main Street I live at. So we use the preposition at. But if I don't know the number, I know I live on Main Street, but I don't know exactly which number, we use the preposition on. So here you can see it also says Main Street, but it does not say number 32. We do not know the number. So if I told you that I live on Main Street, you might have a hard time finding me because I did not tell you which house on Main Street. So you have a little better idea of where I am. You can find the street, but you might not find the house because I did not tell you the exact number. So we say on Main Street. We use on for a street. But then when it gets to even a bigger place, see this word big, like a city or a country, we use the preposition in. I live in London. I live in Taiwan. So let's take a look at our world. Here we have a look at our world. Our world has 7 continents. This is a good word to know. Continent. And there are 7. We are right here. There's Taiwan. It's the orange one, and that is the continent of Asia. So we would say we live in Asia. The other continents, I'm going to read them for you here just so that you know how to say them. This one here where the United States is, so this is where Miss Camp is from, this is the USA. The USA and Canada, which is up here, and Mexico. Canada, USA, and Mexico are the names of countries, but these three countries are in the continent of North America. So the name of my continent is North America. This continent is South America, and then we come over here and we have in red the continent of Europe. And then down here in yellow we have the continent of Africa, and there's Asia. Down here in pink we have the continent of Australia, and down here at the bottom is the continent of Antarctica. So a continent is a really big amount of space, and we say in. I live in Asia. Okay, I'm going to move this down here, and I want to show you another look at the continents, but this one also has the oceans on it, and I just wanted to read these for you. This one is the Atlantic Ocean. This is the Pacific Ocean. Taiwan is near the Pacific Ocean because Taiwan is right there. This is the Indian Ocean, and up at the top is the Arctic Ocean. Okay, we're going to get back to our in, on, and at. So for the continents, we said we live in Asia. Here's another look at the world. We can say we live in the world. We live in Asia. We live in Taiwan. Okay, here's another look at the world. Maybe. So we live in the world. We live in Asia. We live in Taiwan. Okay, we could look just at our country and say we live in Taiwan. We can get closer. Here's Taiwan, and we can say we live in Taichung. Okay, that's still a big amount of space, and we still say in. Okay, there's our last two maps here. All right, so this one is a map of where Morrison Academy is. Okay, so that's where it says here, home. When you look at this map, you can see some things you might know. Up here is the, I call this 70, I just call it 74. This is the name of it in Chinese. I drive on this road a lot. And here is the Morrison Academy School. So let's look at what road this is on. And I'm going to turn this so we can show it here. So you can see, here's the name of the road. So we follow this road down here, and then here's how you go into the school. So here I would say Morrison is on Sipping Road. I just say the name of the road. I do not give the number, so I say on Sipping Road. If I say the number, if I say 216 Sipping Road, then I say at, because that's very specific. I know exactly which house on this whole road here. This is a long road, and if I just tell you I live on Sipping Road, you might not know exactly where to find the school. But if I give you the number, then you know exactly where to find it. So we say I live at 216 Sipping Road. I live on Sipping Road. All right, our last one, all of our little maps, is this one. Let's see if I can make it bigger here. It doesn't want to get bigger. This one is in Chinese. This is a piece of, or a part of, Taichung, and you can see I always look for 74 because I'm on 74 all the time. 74 is this road right here. There's also 74 over on this side. But what you might recognize here is this school. So a school is a very specific place if I give the name of it. So if we want to say that we go to school, oops, I'm writing Taichung. We don't want to say that. Let's say we go to school at Donghai. We would say at, because if I say, here it is, if I say I go to school at Donghai Elementary School, that I know exactly where it is. I don't have to wonder where it is. I've given the name of the place. I want to give an example of camping. This came up when we were doing a story last week. If we are going on a camping trip, we would say we are going on a camping trip. We would not say we are going to a camping trip. We could say that we are going to the campground or to the campsite. But for a camping trip, we would say on. The reason for that is because a camping trip is not a place. A camping trip is something we do. You can see in this picture that there's a lot of things to do. You can make a campfire and toast marshmallows. You can go hiking. You need to pack and unpack your bags and set up your sleeping bag. You need to set up your tent. You can go fishing. There are a lot of things to do on a camping trip. So a camping trip is not a place. Let's take a quick look at some of these campsites. So here these people would say, we went on a camping trip. On a camping trip. Here is the hammock that we learned about last week. Here is the campfire, the tent. They are camping by a lake. These people are also camping by a lake. The preposition I used in that sentence was by. I said they are by a lake. But they are on a camping trip. So let's see when we would use the word to. Here is a campground that my family went to when I was a kid. We went there almost every summer. So here's a picture or a map of the United States. And if we zoom in right here to this part of the country, here's the Atlantic Ocean over here. This little state right here, that's where Miss Camp lived. That was the state of Connecticut. We have an abbreviation CT. That was Connecticut. And we would get in our car and we would drive up here to this state. This state was called New Hampshire. Now our abbreviation is NH, New Hampshire. And in New Hampshire, we would find our campground. So our campground, this is what it looked like. It's very pretty. It was on a lake. The name of it was, let's see, we'll do another picture here. You can see the lake. And there's a beach over here that we could play on. The name of it was Pilgrim Pines. And when we got there, so we would say, here's where we would say to. We went to Pilgrim Pines. We went to New Hampshire. We went to the campground, because those are the names of a place. And when we got there, we would find out, well, where is our campsite going to be? So we would drive in here on this road, and then we would drive up here, and we would go maybe this way, and maybe we would say, oh, we're at A5, and that is where we would set up our tent. So we would be driving to our campsite, but we would be going on a camping, that's an A, camping trip. Because a camping trip is not a place, it's a thing that we do. Like we go on vacation, because vacation is something that we do. Okay, the rest of these slides I am just going to show you, and maybe I will post them in Seesaw. Here's another look at the upside down triangle. And the way that you look at something like this is you split it in half. Okay, this side over here is for looking at time. Oops, I need a color, time. And this side over here is for looking at place or where. And we have talked about the words like century and decade. This slide is just looking at when we use the preposition in, and you can see some of them are for places and some of them are for times. So in the box, this is a place, place, place. All of these are places. And over here, these are all times. With on, we get a little bit more specific, but we don't know exactly where we are or exactly when it is, but it's a little bit more specific. It's still going to be when and where. This is where, and these are when. At is the preposition we use when we know a very specific place or time. Specific. Here on the left side, we can see some specific places. At school, at home, at work, at the table. On this side, we can see some specific times. At 10 o'clock or at 2:15. At dawn is the time in the morning when we can first see the sun come up. At night. At night does not seem as specific, but this is, with the word night, we say at night. At the age of 7, at breakfast. These are specific times. So when it is specific and we know exactly when something is happening or exactly where we are, we use the preposition at. Here are some more prepositions that answer the question of when. So we have in, on, and at. And we remember that in is for a big amount of time, like in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, in January. Okay, and then we go to on. On would be on a specific day, on Monday, on Wednesday, on Sunday, on a certain date like on April 15th. And then at would be a specific time, at 8:30, at 6, at midnight. I'm going to leave this one here that you can read if you want to, but I don't like this one because I really like it to show this one first, and then this one second, and then this one third. Because, let me go like this. In is the most general, the biggest amount of time. And at is the most specific. We know more exactly. And on is sort of in the middle. And so I like them to put them in that order. So here we have in, on, and at. This is a better order. So in would be the biggest amount of time. On would be a specific day or a specific date, like May 5th. And at would be a very specific time. We really know exactly when it is. And then here are two more pictures that I will put in Seesaw for you. This is looking at in, at, and on. In, at, and on, which you can see here. In, at, and on. And I will put that in Seesaw for you to look at if you want to. And this is looking at in, again, at, and on for time, for looking at when, for answering the question when. Okay, that was another long lesson today. Thanks for hanging in there. See you tomorrow.